everybody. My name is Helfand. I'm one of the people who works for the Tikvah program. So today's speech is sponsored by the Tikvah program. Not everyone is here from the group, so we're recording it. But this is an awesome opportunity. This is Professor Michael Helfand. This is the fourth time you've come? Fourth time he's come to speak to us. He's giving a fascinating presentation on when religion makes you feel like an outsider. And to no further ado, I present Michael Helfand.
First of all, thank you so much for being on two separate sides of the room. I really appreciate that. Maybe I'll just park myself in the middle. Okay, here's so seniors, you guys took the SATs last year. I think I took the SATs in this room.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident about it.
Really?
I think actually in that chair.
How did you do?
Actually, a funny story I'll tell you later about a friend of mine who intentionally hurt his sheet so that the Prof will have to leave. But that's not for now. For now, we're going to talk about when religion makes you feel like an outsider. So you took the SAT, so you've got vocabulary. You can here. Let's start with nothing.
Point it at the computer.
What do you want me to
Is
do?
it off? I made it better.
You point it at.
There we go. Okay. Let's try that again. Can anybody define the word theocracy? Theocracy. Okay. Okay, good. Theocracy. Everybody else drawing a blank here?
I agree with what you said.
You agree with what he said? The rest of you are kind of non-committal?
Concur.
You concur? Oh, look at you. That's fancy. Concurring is pretty fancy. That's not just agreeing. You're concurring. I like it. I like it. All right, here we go. Yeah, a form of government in which God is recognized as the supreme civil ruler, with God's laws being interpreted by religious authorities. I gave you a little picture from. Anybody locate where that is? Pictures from? Yes? Anybody want to guess? No? Really? No?
Probably Iran.
Not Iran. That's Iran. Very good. Very good. Iran's a nice example of a theocracy. What I want to do today is I want to explain to you, I want to think about the following question. Okay? Today's question, how does the United States Constitution prevent the United States from turning into a theocracy? Relatively straightforward. Oh man, we're just getting, you're going to answer the question already? But I haven't told you all the wonderful things I'd like to tell you today.
I thought it was like an open-ended question.
It is it's an open-ended question. I'm going to try and put a little meat on the bones today. To figure it out, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the First Amendment. A little piece of it, the religion clauses. And we're going to try and answer a little bit of today's question. Okay, so here's what I want to start by showing you, all right? The religion clauses of the First Amendment. Okay, here we go. Anybody ever see these words before? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's not a lot of words. How many words is that, like 15? Now, what I'm going to try and show you today how these 15 or so words are the words that prevent the United States from becoming a theocracy. 15 words. That's it, the whole thing. These 15 words, what are often referred to as the religion clauses, are made up of two different pieces, okay? The first one is what we call the Establishment Clause. I'm guessing you can figure out why. And the second half is something called the Free Exercise Clause. Two pieces of the puzzle. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Here's what I want to do. I want to figure out with you today what those words might mean and how they answer the question. But we're going to have to, I do this with hypos, what we call them possible hypos, hypothetical questions. We're going to have to do this by answering some questions. So here are the words again. You all see the words? I'm going to ask you to answer the following question for me. Question. All right. Harvard University, how many people applied to Harvard in the room?
Well, you're not supposed to ask that.
Who applies? I can't ask the question of the year. That's nerve-wracking. Well, for some of you, keep it secret in your head. Don't tell me the answer to that question. Tell me the answer to this question. Harvard University requires applicants to pledge their allegiance to the Pope. I guess that'd be a little bit complicated at this very moment, but just imagine that they do that. Pledge their allegiance to the Pope. Does that violate either of the religion clauses? Were there any of those 15 words that makes you think, 15 words, they're up here, do you think these 15 words would prevent Harvard University from doing this? 15 words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. My man who concurs in the back, what's your name?
That's completely, my name's Jake.
Jake?
Jake.
Jake, tell me about this.
That's completely legal.
Completely legal?
Yes.
Why?
Because it doesn't say anything about Harvard University, it just simply says Congress.
I love it, Jake. Yeah, that's what I got. That's my answer too. Look at that. You see, I just double underlined that. See how I did that? Are you watching? Look at that. There, it's Congress. These words talk about, as Jake just said, Congress. They don't talk about everything else. Congress. Okay, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit, okay? I'm going to switch it up and make it a little bit harder. Are you ready?
No.
You're not?
I don't think so.
Should we take a break? All right, here we go. This is actually my favorite part of the PowerPoint presentation, so I really want you to take
Alright,
it.
so let's go.
Are you watching? Are you watching carefully?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, it's not Harvard anymore. You see what I just did?
Michigan.
Should I do it again? There we go. Now it's Michigan. See, it bounced in. That's cool. I like that. Question: University of Michigan requires applicants to pledge their allegiance to the vote. Does that violate either of the religion clauses? Your name?
Allison.
Allison. What's the answer?
I'm gonna say yeah, just because University of Michigan is a public university.
Oh, but it does say Congress. Jake was pretty emphatic about that. What do you think? Does anybody? Oh, now we're just cheating. Now we're just cheating. Hey.
They should
hold on
know
a
that.
second. Well, in the past when I've actually asked similar questions to audiences, I've even got people who have referred to the particular bit of constitutional doctrine to answer this question. Allison, you're right. Your intuition is 100% correct. It does say Congress. But the Supreme Court has interpreted the 14th Amendment. It's this thing called the incorporation doctrine. It's not just Congress anymore that can't establish religions or prohibit the free exercise thereof, but also states and state agencies. And guess what? University of Michigan, you know what that is? That's a state agency. That's basically Michigan requiring people to pledge their allegiance to the Pope. And that, what I would tell you today is, that would be the establishment of a religion. If it turned out that a government agency, in order to get something from them, required you to pledge your allegiance to some sort of religion, we'd be establishing a religion. We'd be really close to a theocracy at that point, right? You'd feel strange if it turned out, you open the mail at whatever university that I'm not allowed to ask you about, you open it up and it said, yeah, please fill out the form, right? And by the way, part 12, this is where you pledge your allegiance to the Pope, and that's the only way you can get into our school. So the answer is, this type of thing would probably violate both provisions of the Constitution. It would both be restrict your ability to exercise your religion. You can only do something if you pledge your allegiance, and it would also be the government establishment of religion. This is not going to work, and what I've told you is that there's this thing called the incorporation doctrine. While Jake so astutely told us that it applies to Congress, the Supreme Court has subsequently told us it also applies to states and state agencies. Everyone have a sense of how the First Amendment is trying to protect us just a wee bit against the theocracy, right? I actually had a student this semester who told me he's Baha'i, and he told me his family just left, a couple of years ago, left Iran. And the reason they left Iran is because he's Baha'i, he could not get into any universities in Iran. He wanted to go to university. And so he asked his parents, he and his sister asked his parents actually to leave. That's the paradigmatic example of theocracy. This can't happen in the United States, but in a theocracy, that's exactly what could happen. Your ability to go to university could be contingent on your willingness to sign up and pledge allegiance to a particular religion. Okay, so let's break this up. Let's break this up. It's true. Everything I said is true. I promise. I don't lie. I pledge to tell the truth. There's no question. Okay, here we go. So let me give you another example. Here's another example, okay? Again, we're going to do one of these cases. I like cases. I like to talk about things that could, I guess, theoretically happen. Here we go. Imagine for a moment Congress passes a law to use surplus tax revenue. You all know what surplus means? That means extra. Surplus, we don't really have so much surplus tax revenue. But imagine we did. So they say, okay, in order to build a church next to the White House, explain that all good Americans should feel responsible to praying this new church at least once a year. And here's the question. Does this new initiative violate either of the religion clauses? What do you think? We've got 50.
It depends.
Your first name?
Gabi.
Gabi?
Yeah.
What do
It
you think?
depends how you interpret the word should. Like, is
Okay.
that a requirement, or does that mean that it's something that they should do?
Okay, so I think that's fair. So, and your sense is if should is just kind of saying, this is what you ought to do, we're not going to require it, but you should do it. That would be okay. Okay, anybody else have a thought on this one? What does this corner think of? The front row over here. One of the three of you has to answer the question. What are your names? Celine, Rebecca, or Eli? What do you think? Do you agree with Gabi? Maybe, maybe not? What do you say?
I think that using money from Congress to build a church would be violent the first part of
The Establishment Clause?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you're right, Gabi. Maybe we should say to ourselves, you know, they're not requiring it, so maybe it doesn't restrict my ability to exercise religion. I'm not being forced to go to a church. But at the same time, I mean, doesn't this look like the United States, that Congress is establishing a religion and telling people? I mean, can we imagine this happening? What I would tell you actually is, yeah, this is going to violate the Establishment Clause. Congress can't use its money and throw its weight around and authority around to say, you know what you people should all do? You should pray at this particular house of worship. Turns out the government can't even fund religion in a variety of ways. Sometimes, some people even think you can't use its money to help churches or synagogues that have been flooded by a hurricane. But this thing over here, this would directly violate the Establishment Clause. So kind of bottom line point here, the Establishment Clause most definitely prohibits government from establishing a national religion. They can't say, this is what we are all about. We're all about this church. And you see, you know, this is a good way to make sure we're not a theocracy. If we don't tell people, this is where you pray. You pray wherever you pray. We're not getting involved. We're not building churches. We're not funding religions. We're staying out of all that. Let me give you another example. Here, let's talk about this one for a second. Imagine that you apply to work at the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. Right? I'm sure you've all considered it. You've waited there so long, you figure, if only I could be on the other side of the table, things would move faster, I wouldn't have to sit here so long. So, after you finish a full day of interviews, you are ushered into the director of the DMV's office for a final meeting. This may be not true, actually. I don't know if there's a director of the DMV. I made that up. But there probably is, right? There's got to be somebody. I mean, maybe that's why it's so slow. Maybe he's in control. But in any event, during that meeting, he says to you the following. He says, we really enjoyed having you here today, and think you'd make a great DMV employee. But we're not going to hire you because you're Jewish. Okay, so here's the question. Does this hiring policy violate either of the religion clauses? Well, you answer your question, right? I need to pester somebody else. Front row over here. Your names? There you go. And Effie, you haven't answered anything. Not a single thing. I have so many questions. I think good questions also. What do you think?
I think it's fine.
You think it's fine? We're not. We have a state agency. They're saying we're not hiring you because of your religion.
Of the two clauses, I don't think it violates either.
Tell me why not.
Because it's not a matter that you can't do something because, like you can still practice your Judaism.
Okay.
You can't not do that.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily promoting all the other religions.
Okay. Okay, so if I told you, like we were just chatting on the street, and I said to you one day, hey, Effie, I know you want a particular job in a law firm, well, not such a law firm. I know you want a job, I know you want to be a congressman one day, but I got to tell you something. We have a rule that says Jews can't be congressmen. You'd say, no biggie, right? Because it doesn't violate either of the religion clauses. That's what you can.
Yeah, I mean, I know that that's not the case.
Why do you think it's not the case?
We went about this far.
But we're in a class.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's, so then why isn't it the case?
I think I remember that there was another law saying that you can't discriminate based on religion.
So there is a law, there's something called Title VII that says in employment you can't discriminate on the basis of religion. That would apply to private employers. But what I'm going to tell you right now is this is the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles. It's a state agency, and guess what? Guess what? This, I say to you, if this came up, in fact, it would never come up. The reason it would never come up is because the truth is, this would actually violate the Free Exercise Clause. Government can't make rules or apply policies that in some way target a particular religion. They can't say, we're going to single you out for worse treatment than anybody else. To do that, even though, Effie's right, you can go about practicing your religion, that wouldn't be a problem. The fact that you have a state saying you can't do something because of what you believe, that would violate the Free Exercise Clause, because you have a policy that targets you, and you in particular, and nobody else, because we're just not hiring Jews in the state agency, that would violate the Free Exercise Clause. And kind of the bottom line take home here is, the Free Exercise Clause prohibits government from discriminating on the basis of religion. You can't be discriminated against because of your particular faith. And we got some hands in the back. Who's going first? Yes.
May I?
Your name?
John.
Do you have a name that everybody else knows you by here?
The rest of them?
Yeah.
Dr. Jacoby.
Dr. Jacoby.
At least that's what they said.
Okay. Wait. Did you do the bait team? No, not the bait team.
I'm not
Oh,
trying.
okay,
Don't tell me
good.
the one against you.
No. I think you're famous. Yeah, you're real famous.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So one is,
Right. So I'm just wondering, would a state agency, at the present, in terms of all the case law, what if the director was not quite so direct and he said, we have some issues, this is a place that's open Monday through Friday until 5 o'clock, and how would that work with the fact that in the wintertime you need to leave early?
Yeah, so there's an exception under Title VII if there's a bona fide reason for why your religion, it has to be a business necessity. So you have to prove that he needs you. He really needs you on Saturday. So you have to prove that the DMV is in desperate need of people to man its windows on Saturday. Now, I believe
because we know how much
the DMV is closed on Saturday, right? But yeah, so it would be peculiar. I think you'd want to change the DMV part of the fact pattern. Also, you'd want to say this in DMV, something is actually open on Saturday, a helpful state agency, which, as we all know, is not the DMV. So that, but you could. That's right. And there is a business necessity option, but at that point, the burden is on the government to explain what it's doing. It's a high bar, and they have to. We talk a lot about all their other hiring practices, but you're right in general to say that there's an evidentiary problem with discrimination. Something we will not talk about today. We'll not use the word evidentiary again because as soon as I used that, Jake was done. He is so far gone. I said the word evidentiary, and he was half asleep. And so I won't do it again. I promise you. That's a deal we're making. Okay, you with me? We're making a deal right now, and. It's a problem with when you say discrimination, it's hard to know what's in people's brains. And that's a problem. Now, I'm just saying, I would be more, sometimes I fall asleep when I say the word evidentiary. So, okay, good. So, yes, Rabbi Sklarin.
Thank you. You said before that the state can't push one religion, but they're allowed to push religion in general. That's okay? Like, on money it says, in God we trust, so they're pushing religion. They're just not push any particular.
Yeah, everyone wants to know about the in God we trust thing. I think if the Supreme Court had to start all over again, if they were today drafting like what it says on the dollar, they would not put those words on the dollar. But it's been on the dollar for so long, they can't quite say you can't do that. But I think you're undoubtedly right to say that saying in God we trust is probably inconsistent with the current Supreme Court doctrine. I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. But come on, we're not going to redo the dollar bill. You don't really want us. It would be very expensive to redo the dollar bill. If there's something out there, you'd have to erase it. It'd be a pain. It would be a real pain. Okay, let me try. Okay, so we're warming up a little bit over here. You get the feeling, right? We do. I give you a little bit of a case. We talk a little bit about it. I'm going to give you more cases. Now, what I want to do today is I want to show you a little bit about these two bits of how this is played out, like what people have fought over in terms of the Establishment Clause, what we're going to focus on today, a little bit of the Free Exercise Clause, and then what I want to finish up with is the air of controversy in the Hamptons. Okay, maybe you heard a little bit about it. Hopefully, you've all seen the Jon Stewart clip. If you haven't, I'll show it to you again because it's hilarious. Okay, so here's the Establishment Clause. Now, there was this case in 2000 called Santa Fe Independent School District v. Doe, and here's what happened. Basically, football is king in Texas, right? You all watch Friday Night Lights?
Yeah.
There we go. Now I got some excitement in the room. Now we're talking. I should just show clips from Friday Night Lights. So here's what they did. They had a student who was in charge of giving a prayer. I've never watched Friday Night Lights. I don't know if it's happens Friday Night Lights. But they had a student. You'll tell me? I appreciate that. And they have, what they did is they, in the Santa Fe School District, they had a student representative who was in charge of making a prayer before each football game. Okay? Before each football game, there was a student who would give a prayer, Christian, as you can imagine, and somebody named Doe, they didn't want to be identified, brought a challenge. They said, you know what, you can't do that, because when you do that, I think what it looks like is you're establishing a religion. You're saying, this is the state's religion. Okay, and here's the question that the Supreme Court had to deal with. Does a school policy allowing an elected student to deliver prayer over the public address system before varsity football games violate the Establishment Clause? Well, what do you think? You've seen the words, right? Can you imagine over the loudspeaker, you have a student, they give a prayer, and they say, you know, pray for, they're praying to Jesus, and they say Jesus should bless the football team and all of that. Question, does that violate the Establishment Clause? It's the school district, it's the government. Jake, you're back in.
Yeah.
I love it.
Alright.
What do you say?
Does it have to be a Jesus? I mean, if it's...
Well, I'm just telling you what was happening.
So if it's specific to Jesus, then what school is it?
It's a public school in the Santa Fe School, Independent School District.
Okay,
The
so-
state agency, I'll even give that to you.
Okay, so it's wrong.
It's wrong. You say it violates the Establishment
That's false.
Clause. We have to shut that down. Okay, anybody disagree?
I mean, I think as long as it doesn't mention like a specific religion, it's just like a prayer, just for the, everybody should do well, then I don't really see an issue with it.
Okay, how do you think the atheists in the room would feel?
Not good.
Not good. Your name?
Rafi.
So what do you think? Do you agree that as long as it's all religions, it should be, that's good enough, or are you worried about the atheists in the house?
Jesus. So
What?
They say Jesus.
Yeah, we're mixing it up over here. Imagine I pull Jesus out of the equation. I say God.
Atheists would feel uncomfortable.
Okay, do you think that should matter?
Yeah.
And if it matters, so you would think even if it's just God generally, it should be a problem and we should shut it down.
Oh, it's general God, then it's fine.
I can't hear you.
It's general God, then it's fine.
You think so, and Rafi, you think?
What do atheists think when they hear...
Hold on, Jake. I need to hear Rafi.
I don't know if it violates this, but I know it would upset some people.
Okay, good. Well, let me tell you what the Supreme Court said, okay? Here's what the Supreme Court said. They said, yeah, you can't do that. That violates the Establishment Clause. Here was the argument, okay? Here's this nice little paragraph, the whole thing. The Supreme Court says, school sponsorship of a religious message is impermissible because, and here's the key, it sends the ancillary message to members of the audience who are not adherents that they are outsiders, not full members of the political community. As an accompanying message to adherents that they are insiders, favored members of the political community. This is the core of kind of what I'll call the endorsement test of the Establishment Clause. When you get up there and say that, everybody who's not on board with the God you're praying to feels like they don't belong. They're the outsider. Okay? They're an outsider, and this is a state agency that's endorsing a prayer to a particular religion. Everybody else who's not on board, you're not full members of a political community. Got it.
Okay, so it says who are non-adherents, which probably means either people that are not adhering to that specific religion or atheists. I feel like that includes atheists.
I think that's right.
What about singing God Bless America at baseball games?
Well, what do you think the answer is about the baseball games?
I think the answer should be the same thing, but it's not.
The key here is you got to remember who are we talking about.
Oh, it's right. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So baseball's covered in the by government. Isn't it under because it gets got monopoly protection or whatever.
So you may be right. There may be an argument there in part. One thing you may argue is, hey, listen, you're getting some funding, and therefore, maybe because you're getting funding, this may apply. I mean, when they do say God Bless America, you're talking national anthem type stuff. It's very likely that type of stuff fits in with what Rabbi Sclaren was asking about before, like the dollar bill. And there are certain things, like the Declaration of Independence that references, how we received our rights basically from God. And we don't think that violates the Establishment Clause. I mean, maybe it does. But that's got to be very different than what we're seeing over here, right? I mean, a direct prayer at a school football game. I mean, some of the things the Supreme Court emphasized in this case are things like you're dealing with a regularly scheduled school-sponsored function, it's on school property, it's broadcast over the school's public address system, it's subject to the control of school officials, there's a prominent display of the school's name. All of that's going on, and then somebody gets up on a microphone and says, everyone bow your heads, and we're going to praise a particular God. All of this, one last sentence and I'm coming. All of this together, the Supreme Court said, makes it look like the public schools is endorsing the prayer. I gotta go here first. Yes?
On the flip side,
Yeah.
can that be, when you just raised, what you just flipped it,
Yeah.
can it be used in a school that is a Jewish day school
Yeah.
to enforce adherence to its policies?
Sure.
In other words,
Sure.
the flip side of it.
Are you
that
asking
we
about prayer? Are you asking about employment? Are you asking
Prayer.
about?
Prayer.
Yeah, so prayer you're not going to have a problem with. In a sectarian school, a parochial school is going to be allowed to pray to school member.
And enforcing its population, saying that if you do not abide by this, you know, that reading that whole clause, you're basically an outsider, not part of this establishment.
Yeah, no, you would not have an establishment clause challenge. Again, this is a sectarian and parochial school that isn't covered by the establishment clause. Even in employment, there's an interesting case out in California right now where teachers were required to sign a faith statement before they were hired, saying that they adhere to a particular religion. And generally, that's perfectly fine, even under Title VII, which generally prohibits discrimination on the basis of religion. The school can discriminate on the basis of religion under Title VII. There's an explicit exception under federal law that allows a school to employ based on religion. They can have practices based on religion. They're a parochial school. They're entitled to do all those things.
Religious views too?
Yeah. It's a private school. No one has to go. So, in fact, a lot cheaper not to go. Okay, good. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. In this
Apologies.
case,
Just worried about time.
in this case, had the student gone up and said, like, I'd like to offer an optional prayer, would that be permissible?
Meaning another student for another religion.
Or no, I'm saying this first student
They
said,
started it.
like, if you want to join
Well,
in, this
I
is
mean,
not-
let's think about it. Let's think what the court focused on for a second. I mean, it's still, what's it going to look like? And this is the really important thing about the endorsement test. You want to ask yourself, what does the outsider feel like under the circumstances? Now, if it was just something voluntary, you know, the school during litigation tried to change what they did. They said, we're not sending the student up, we're asking the students what they want to do, and they're going to vote on who's in it, and then that person is going to go up. Very different. But still, what you're getting is, it looks like, with all this going on, it looks like the school's saying, this is our guy. This is our person making the prayer, and this is what we believe. And it may still make people feel like an outsider. Now, I want to move a little bit from the school prayer context, a fun thing. You've all seen, like, menorahs up during Hanukkah, right?
Yeah.
That's actually constitutional. We can talk about that. That's my favorite picture because that's from Los Angeles, and it's the governor in the background. You know, the governor loves him some Hanukkah. Okay, so here's the question. Next question I want to ask you. Can government place religious symbols on its property? Okay, we're talking about schools, public schools making prayers. Can government place religious symbols on its property? Okay? And things we're talking about, we're talking like menorahs, talking a Christmas tree, 10 Commandments is a popular one. Now, what I'm going to tell you is the answer is, not surprisingly, based on what we've discussed so far, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Here's what it depends on. It depends on whether when we look at the symbols, considered in context, does it look like government's endorsing religion? Does it look like the government saying, this is what we believe in, and the people who don't believe in it, you guys are, you're outsiders. You're on the sidelines. You're second-class citizens. Okay? Now, to play this game, I need you all to play Supreme Court. Okay? You're going to play the Supreme Court in 1989, actually. In this case, County of Allegheny versus the ACLU. I'm going to show you the picture that they were looking at. Okay? We're going to look at what they were looking at. You're going to tell me, does it violate the establishment clause or doesn't it? Here's what was in front of the courthouse in Pittsburgh. Do I have a nice little Zach on this?
You do.
Awesome. Here, lighting's not great. That's a nice big Christmas tree. Next to it is a nice big menorah. Not quite as big, although if you're too much higher, it'd probably be hard to light. Then there's a little sign over here. Everybody see that there's a little sign over here? And I'm going to tell you what it says, okay? Here's what it says. Salute to liberty. During this holiday season, the city of Pittsburgh salutes liberty. Let these festive lights remind us that we are the keepers of the flame of liberty and our legacy of freedom. Question. If you were to see this, would you feel like, hey, the government is endorsing some form of religion? Everybody get what's going on up here? There are three things going on. You got a nice big Christmas tree, kind of big menorah, and a sign. What do you think? Do you think this violates the Establishment Clause? Yeah.
No, it seems to me like the objects are solely there for the culture that they bring people together. Is like what people associate with those objects, and it's sending a message of liberty and freedom. No.
Okay, yeah, this has nothing to do with religion. Again, your name, I'm sorry? Jacob. Well, that's confusing. That's just not it, right? Jacob. Okay, good. So Jacob says, this has nothing to do with religion. Why do you think it's anything to do? Didn't you read the sign? The sign says liberty. This isn't religion. These are just these objects. They're festive lights of freedom. Right? Right, Jacob?
I mean,
No, I probably sounded sarcastic. You're reconsidering your position. Go. You're rock solid over here. Yeah, these are, here's part of what the Supreme Court says. The relevant question for Establishment Clause purposes is whether the combined display of the tree, the sign, and the menorah has the effect of endorsing both Christian and Jewish faiths. Option A, we'll call it the red option. Or rather simply recognizing that both Christmas and Hanukkah are part of the same winter holiday season, which has attained a secular status in our society. So Jacob, you've endorsed the blue option. How many votes for the red option? Any votes for the red option? I'm going to say any votes for the blue option. If nobody raises their hand, blue option. Okay, and we have 3 people abstaining. You're going to have to explain why you abstain now.
Because
you don't, neither blue nor red? Got to be one of them. The Supreme Court said it's one of the other. You're straddling, you're in the or. You're living in the or. I hear that. Who else didn't raise their hand? Jake, I don't think I saw you raise your hand.
No, I raised my hand.
What did you raise your hand for?
Blue.
Blue?
Yeah.
Who else didn't raise their hands? You didn't raise your hand.
Yeah,
You're living in the or.
I'll go with the red then.
Yeah, you don't have to. I don't force you to go with that. I mean, I'm just asking. So you think it has the effect of endorsing religion. Most of you think blue. Most of you are on board that we've got, because whenever you guys saw Hanukkah menorah, you're like, that has nothing to do with religion. Like when you light your Hanukkah candles on Hanukkah, you say to yourself, I can't wait to light the festive lights of freedom, right? Right? That's what you all say?
No, I don't think they're lack that they.
You say,
No, but I do think they have a non-religious aspect to them, a cultural aspect, and in the picture we just saw, it wasn't endorsing the religious aspect of like whatever Christmas tree symbolizes and blessing God for keeping people alive.
Okay, good. Guess what? Guess who agrees with you? Supreme Court. Supreme Court goes with the blue option. So for all of you who were hoping to be Supreme Court justices, you have intuitions along the same lines of Supreme Court. I, on the other hand, would think that red might be the option over here. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So, and that's fine. Okay, good. Do you all feel like you understand how this endorsement test works? I feel like you do. You all almost all of you got the question right. Okay, I'm going to skip the next couple of slides that I was hoping to do with you just because we don't have time, which is a shame because it's about people in a drug rehab center smoking peyote and then being upset that they get dismissed for cause, but we'll have to talk about that next time we hang out. Okay? Next time we hang out. Okay, this time we're going to talk about another case called Kyrios Joel v. Grumet or Grummet. Okay? You don't like Grumet? It's like Sarge.
We have a student with that last name.
Okay, what does he call? He or she call himself? Grummet. Okay, I don't know. Let's call the person Grummet for now. Okay. Now here's what happens. You have in Kyrios Joel, okay, a Hasidic community, and here's what they say. They have this problem. They have a number of a number of the kids in the community are they have special needs, and the community does not want to send those children to a public school. They feel like their kids will get corrupted. They don't want to send their kids to a public school. So what New York State does is they create a school district just for this Hasidic community, just for them. They draw the lines directly around the Hasidic community. That way they can create a public school system for public schools for them that only have members of the Hasidic sect. It's perfect, right? This way, New York State can say, we understand the problem that you're having. We understand your lack of comfort with sending kids to the public schools, and so here you go. Here's a school district. And not surprisingly, somebody then challenges this idea that we're going to create this independent school district. And they say, guess what? They say law is unconstitutional. So here's the question. You got the idea? We've drawn a school district just for a Hasidic community. Question, do you think that that's constitutional? We got one hand. Just one hand? You guys are experts. Like 90% of you got the last one right. And now, like 20% of you are raising your hands. That's weak. I forgot your name. I'm feeling bad about that.
I wasn't raising my hand.
I know, but I don't care. Rafi. What do you think the answer is?
Okay.
Yeah, you think not raising your hand protects you from my asking questions. Huge mistake. I actually typically call people who are not raising their hands.
I think it's not constitutional.
Why not?
because I don't think that you can make a public school system and segregate it based on what religion the kids are.
Okay, good. So which provision, is it one of the religious clauses?
Or
Yeah, the establishment clause. Look at that, you didn't raise your hand, but you still had an answer.
I am.
It's while it raises your hand. What?
yeah, okay.
Okay, good. I'll keep on going, you see, you know. Okay, I like it. Good. And the Supreme Court's answer is it constitutional? The answer? The answer, no. It violates the establishment clause. You're right. Do you feel good about that? Now, you're like 2 for 2. They may as well sign you up for the black robe right now. You hear what I'm saying? Okay, good. No, it violates the establishment clause, the Supreme Court says. And here's why the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional. Exactly the reasons you were talking about. The lines in the school district were drawn around the boundaries of a religious community, and what it shows is the New York State Legislature was giving political authority to a specific religious community. And the lesson of this is, my apologies, the lesson of all this is you can't pick out one religious community as opposed to others to receive these types of special benefits. You can't say, this is the religion that's getting a school district, all the other religions, you're not getting a school district. Maybe in the future, what the Supreme Court says now. You can't pick out one religion to get a school district. But here's kind of the problem this all raises. The problem is that sometimes when the government tries to help a religious group adhere to its religious traditions, all we're trying to do is we see there's a problem for a particular religious group. Here's what their faith requires, here's what their traditions require. Maybe we can do something to the law to give them what's going to help them observe their faith. That's exactly what ends up looking like we're endorsing religion. We're trying to solve a problem for a particular community, and by trying to solve the problem for the religious community, we end up making it look like we're endorsing that religion as opposed to others. And if we allow government to endorse religion, the worry is we're pretty close to becoming a theocracy. Okay, that's the worry. We try to help religion, we try to give it something, but by giving it to one group, it looks like we're saying, this is our favorite group. Now you may say this is a little crazy. I mean, did anybody really think that, the federal government, really what they want to endorse is this Samar Hasidism? Like, that's what we were worried about, like in 1994. We really thought Bill Clinton was going to be like, guess what, guys? I'm Satmar. Yeah, that would have been weird, right? Given everything that Bill Clinton did. Yeah, right? That would have been weird, right? That would have been weird. Hi, I'm Satmar. It started like, you put on like, you think this was craziness. But that's exactly what the Supreme Court said we're worried about. We're worried about government saying, you know what, that's the religion we're on board with. Okay. My goal I think we have a general sense about how the establishment clause works. I want to spend the rest of our time talking a little bit. What time do I have till?
You have like 10 more minutes?
10 more minutes. I'm not going to watch the video, guys. I'm really sorry about that. I know it's killing you. Okay, now hopefully have you all seen the daily shows? The Thin Line, Thin Jewish Line? No? I don't think you've seen it. Raise your hand if you've seen it. Okay, good enough. So there's this debate in the Hamptons right now about whether or not the Jewish community there can set up an Eruv. Okay? Anybody know what an Eruv is?
Yeah.
Okay, an Eruv put this line up, and basically what it does is it's as if there's a wall around the community almost. Creates one property. And because it's one property, you're not carrying within public property you're not carrying in contravention of Shabbos, you're not carrying in a public space. That's the goal of the Eruv. Now some people say, you can't do that. You know why they say you can't do that? Because if the government authorizes, and it would require, in this case, government authorization, a particular...
During homeroom, Sports Report is meeting in the Bet Knesset. Sports Report, the Bet Knesset. Jonathan, all members of the Science Olympiad team must report immediately, right now, to 504. It's a very important message. Again, all members of the Science Olympiad, those winning members, should report immediately to room 504 now during homeroom.
Sounds pretty important. Oh, man. Okay, good. So, hope they all go. So, the people who are against the Eruv, here's what they say. This should sound familiar by now. Okay, here's what they say. They say, An Eruv conveys to the community at large, guess what? That the governmental authorities have selected one particular form of Judaism for special and preferential treatment over other religions as well as over other secular interests in public spaces. And here's the kicker, an Eruv conveys to other Jews that they are not real, true observant Jews, and that whether they like it or not, the practices or beliefs of other forms of Judaism are nevertheless imposed on them.
How does it convey that?
Well, we put up a
So you
string.
don't feel like you need an arrow.
We put up a string. The government says, hey, put up a string. Just like the government said, hey, let's create a school district. Let's draw the line around that particular area. Now the government's authorizing you to put a string around the particular area. And other Jews have said, listen, now we feel like you're saying, that's Judaism, and we're not Jews. And so they claim. And the claim is based on the logic of what we've discussed so far. That that's what's being endorsed. You're the people who like the string, who say they need the string. You guys are the political insiders. People who don't like the string, you're the political outsiders. Okay, now, there have actually been 3 simultaneous lawsuits on this. One of them was recently dismissed, actually this one. I got a friend working on the case, they got it dismissed. I'll kind of out myself on this one, thank goodness. I don't like this case at all. It's terrible and evil, but let's leave that aside for a second. Okay, so this is the argument, though. And you see how the argument kind of tracks all the things we've been discussing so far, prayer in public schools, and then we talked a little bit about symbols on government property, then drawing a school district around a particular area. Now we're putting a string with government authorization around a particular area. Maybe that should violate the First Amendment. It looks like it won't, based on the cases we've got so far. It's never done so in the United States before, but this is the argument, yes?
But if you don't put the string, isn't that kind of discriminating against the religion?
We don't let anybody put strings up. Now you're right, though. One of the things they've argued in the case, they said, oh yeah, so you don't like when people put things up? Look at all the other things you authorize to be put up around the community, other symbols, that signs you allow to be put up. And so you're completely right. Exactly one of the things they're pushing in this litigation is...
Please come to the 6th floor office right now. Joshua Adler, Jonathan Broom, Talia Engelmeyer, and Allison Goldberg.
Oh.
Joshua Adler, Talia Engelmeyer, Allison Goldberg. Please come to the 6th now.
Okay, so this is what they've argued. That you're completely right, though. That's exactly one of the things they're pushing in litigation. Maybe it's not endorsement because you're letting all these other people put up signs, so you should let us do it also. You shouldn't discriminate against us. And if they're successful on that point, they're probably going to win in this case. So you're completely right. But this is the claim. So it's a friend of mine who's doing the case, so I decided that I'd write something in a newspaper kind of advocating his position, not just because it's a friend of mine, but because this is the right thing to advocate. So I wrote something saying it's terrible that there's this lawsuit. I think these people are all messed up. And somebody sent in the following letter to the editor, attacking me. Okay, this is what they wrote. Okay, law professor Michael Helfand, that's me, does not mention that the Eruv would also encircle numerous non-Jewish homes, whether they are strings around your neighborhood or crosses on a hilltop. They are religious symbols. They carry much significance. Would Helfand, that's me, approve of Christian symbols, even unobtrusive ones, around his home? That was the question he asked me. And so I had to respond. I thought about this for a bit. I mean, this is a person who's saying he feels uncomfortable, he feels like an outsider when he sees somebody else's religious symbol. I want to finish by showing you, I got 5 minutes, right? I want to finish by showing you kind of what I responded. So this is what I wrote back into this thing, and then kind of, this was my response. It's a lot of words on the page, but I want to show them to you, tell you a little bit about it, and then with that we'll wrap up. Okay, so here's my response. It's a lot of words. I'm a law professor at Pepperdine University.
Kitty Moselle Rosen, please go to the science office. The following students need to come to 6th now. Joshua Adler, Talia Engelmeyer, and Allison Goldberg.
So much time, it's amazing. Okay, I'm going to be done in 3 minutes, feel free to leave. I'm a law professor at Pepperdine University, a Christian institution whose campus entrance is adorned by a 125-foot tower inlaid with a 50-foot cross. I recommend going online and taking a look. It's actually kind of beautiful. Every morning when I see the cross, I don't feel like an outsider. To the contrary, my university's commitment to faith has led it to embrace my own religious commitments by both respecting my beliefs and accommodating my practices. Far from undermining my religious freedom, the Pepperdine Cross enhances it. Speaking as a Jew, it represents religious freedom at its very best because it symbolizes how members of different faiths can be joined together in an environment of mutual respect. And I finished with, it is disheartening that some in the Hamptons are unable to see the error of strength in the same light. Here's what the endorsement test is based on, okay? The endorsement test is based on you see somebody else's religious symbol and you assume immediately their symbol as opposed to your symbols, okay? Their string as opposed to your string, their school district as opposed to your school district, their menorah as opposed to your Christmas tree. What I tried to advocate here, and one of the things the thing I want to leave you with is, we don't have to react that way to other people's religious symbols. I mean, when we see religious symbols, we think, you know what, they have their religious symbol, they're allowed to display it in public, and that means we can too. Then all of a sudden, religious symbols in a variety of places cease to be not offensive. They don't strike as government endorsing anything. All that government is endorsing in such circumstances, I would contend, is an endorsement of religious freedom, a salute to liberty, if you will. And it's part.
Dan Messman and Noah Moskowitz, please come to the second round.
6th floor is buzzing. It's buzzing with activity right now. I bet you can't even get an elevator there right now. One of the things if we can view religious symbols in this light, the entire grounding of the endorsement test starts to falter. I mean, we don't need to see other religious symbols that way. The best way I would contend, what I tried to advocate here, is that we need to look at other people's religious symbols as an endorsement of religious liberty, not of a particular faith. If we do that, I think things like arrows and crosses and a variety of other symbols start to make us feel better, start to enhance our experience of freedom, as opposed to make us feel like we're on the road to theocracy. Many of you have to go many important places. It was a pleasure being with you today.